you all to I want to welcome you all to the 7th annual meeting of the Prairie to Pine Regional Council. And I'm Doug Neufeld, and along with Don Rolke, we are your co-chairs for Prairie to Pine Regional Council. Don, I don't know if I won or lost the coin toss to be chairing this meeting, but regardless, I am. And anyways, I'd like to take this opportunity in the name of Jesus the Christ, the one who inspired the church to become what it is. I declare that the meeting of the Prairie to Pine Regional Council to be open, and I call this online gathering to order. Before we move to our opening worship, I'd just like to invite Dawn to do the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you. Prairie to Pine Regional Council is located on lands covered by Treaties 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9. These are the traditional and ancestral lands of many Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Rocky Cree, the Swampy Cree, the Plains Cree, the Ojibwe Cree, Dakota, Dene, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. Treaties created relationships between treaty partners, and the agreements that they made were intended to be mutually beneficial. The treaties are living documents that include all of us, and so we are all treaty people. We acknowledge that 5 Dakota communities in Manitoba are not signatory to any treaty within Canada. As Indigenous and non-Indigenous people who call this land home, we know that mistakes, which are part of our history of colonization, have caused deep and lasting harm. We affirm that the sovereignty and distinct nationhood of Indigenous peoples needs to be upheld, and that the sustaining connection to traditional and ancestral lands must support in practical ways this sovereignty and nationhood. We commit ourselves to the truth-telling that needs to continue to happen as we seek reconciliation and healing, and as we work toward a better future. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. I'd now like to invite Shannon for the enabling motion, please.
Shannon, you're muted.
I was, and then I wasn't, and then I was again. I'm here. Good evening, everyone. I'm Shannon McCarthy, the Executive Minister for Prairie to Pine Regional Council. The enabling motions are found in your workbook. They're a bit shortened motions since we don't have any proposals for our time tonight. There's just a few of them there, just about how we will be together in space, in this space online. And I would move, and Tricia Gerhard will second those motions. And Doug, we talked about it on the phone, but we never decided. Were we going to vote, or are we going to go by consensus?
Well, you know what? Why don't we do by consensus, as that's the way that the executive operates, and through our Prairie to Pine Council. So why don't we be consistent? So if all who are in agreement, if you can, we don't see that there's like a red or green vote thing. So if everyone just either throw up a wave or wave your hand, we will see if we can.
I see lots of thumbs up.
I'm seeing lots too. Scrolling through the participants. I would say that this motion is carried. Thank you.
All right. And just because we are meeting in person, this is a sort of, we had this meeting as a placeholder for we've set them up in advance so that dates are available and staff know when things are coming and so on, and you can make your calendars a little bit better planning. But we are meeting face to face in May. So a lot of the things that we might normally do at an annual meeting, we're going to do at that meeting. So things like the in memoriam, accountability reports, questions around budget or the audit and all that kind of stuff. We'll do that in May when we're in person. We wanted today to be a time where we can do some learning and a bit of a report from the General Counsel. So it is less formal maybe than some of our other online annual meetings, in case you're wondering. But, thanks, Doug.
Yes. Yeah, and as you see in your workbook, all the reports are there, and in your enabling motion, in a sense, you received those, and so feel free, if you haven't read them, look them through. If you do have any questions of clarification after the meetings, please feel free to reach out to whoever presented those individual reports. They'd be happy to answer. Well, before we really get into the meat and potatoes of the meeting, I would like to call on Noel to bless us with an opening worship.
Let us all pray. Living and faithful God, the God on whom we live and move and have our being, the God who is made known in Christ Jesus. Bless us all as we gather on you this evening. Empower our hearts and minds with joy for worship and work, and increase within us that holy longing for closeness, which can open our lives to fuller delight and to a deeper commitment. Faithful God, we come into your presence with thanksgiving, deeply grateful for the unfailing love and faithfulness you have shown toward us, your people. The tasks in front of us are challenging, yet when we cry out, you answer. When we are exhausted, you give us the strength to go on. When we find ourselves in a quandary, we find you there standing beside us. May the road ahead of us, our prayers and searching thoughts, be an exercise in the holiest love of your graces working in us. By you, with you, and for you, may our lives publish your praise and glorify you. In the name of Christ Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you so much, Noel. We'll just keep diving right into the agenda. And so next thing up is nominations. And I believe Lynn is presenting this piece.
I am. And I want to say, first of all, if all of you here, thank you. Thank you for being here, because that means you said yes, all of you who are laity. We know a lot of our ministry personnel. This is a commitment they make as well. So thank you for your presence and for your service in what you do for the church. Your work makes a difference and you are appreciated. So we want to very first of all, make sure we say that from the bottom of our hearts of the nominations committee. I'm here on behalf of Joey Dearborn, who has been chairing our mighty team of nominations of Francis Fluke, Marissa Smurl, Heather Lee, and Harold Kenyon and myself. And through the year, spend a lot of time and a lot of phone calls, reaching out to people. And as Joey wrote in his report, we have a lot of people who have continued on in their terms very graciously and continue to serve until they're termed out. And so we do have a slate that has been approved by our executive as our new structure allows us to do. But that slate is included in the workbook of reports I did want to highlight that there was a couple of errors in there and a couple of things we needed to raise to your attention. And one is that we do have a chair-elect, and that is Tricia Gerhardt, who has agreed to stand in that position. And we're very grateful to Tricia for saying yes to that. We also have a couple of typos that we will make sure we get corrected in the report. But if you see any other errors, please let us know. So I do want to raise your attention to the fact that we have Teresa Melnichek on trustees. We unfortunately misspelled her name. And we also misspelled a name, Susan Wepler, on the Equity and Diversity Committee. It's not Susan Weprock. We don't know who Susan is, but if she's available, please tell her to call us. We'd love to have her. So we do have more openings, and we know that if you're here tonight, you're probably also one who wears more than one hat. And we appreciate that people are wearing more hats these days and carrying many more roles than they once did. So filling positions is the same problem we know you have in your communities of faith. But we do look forward to what the church is becoming and will continue to grow into. And we still need willing and able bodies to fill those positions. So we do hope that when you get a call from nominations, that you would be open and prayerfully consider in what ways you might wish to serve this region. The other request we have is that we would like your eyes and ears to be looking for who you might think might be a person of value to help us in that forward thinking toward 2035 church. And so we would love to hear from you. If you have some ideas and some people in mind, please let us know. We do know that an ongoing challenge with moving into the new structure was not always having contact people from the various communities of faith. When your boards change, when your councils change over, we don't always get to know who those new contact people are. So if you please let the Prairie to Pine Region Office know when there's changes and who we might contact, we would love to have that information. But I do want you to know too that as I said, we really appreciate the work that you do for the church, for your willingness to serve. And we know that you are doing that because you feel the importance of this and the need for this work to continue. And that's what we hope to see happen. And as we continue to make our calls to ask you to serve, or for those others who are hoping to serve. So we would like to put that challenge out to be looking at who else you think might fit into the many openings that we have. But we're looking forward to continuing this work, and we are thankful for all of you who have said yes. So that's it for me.
All right. Thank you so much, Lynn. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate yourself, Joey, and the rest of the team for this great work. We can't do the work of the church without having the people that we need in place. And so please be gracious to the nominations team and to your region. Again, like she said, when that phone rings. Yeah, so that moves us on in our agenda. And so something that I'm really excited about is our Toward 2035 presentation. And so I invite Cam and Jordan to host their presentation.
Well, thanks, Doug. glad to be here. I'm going to take us through some slides, and then Jordan and some others will participate as well in some questions and conversation that emerge from that afterwards. So let me get some slide sharing happening here. I'm hoping that you're seeing a title slide there. How are we doing for that? I'm seeing some thumbs up, so that is wonderful. So my friends, if we've not met before, my name is Cameron Fraser, and I serve the church in the General Council offices as the Director of Growth and Ministry Development. I get to work with wonderful growth animators like Jordan Cantwell, who's here as well. I do my particular work from my home in the Cathedral neighborhood in Regina, Saskatchewan, which is about 900 meters away from Mosaic Stadium. So maybe you've heard me cheering while you've been watching the Bombers and Riders play there someday. And I've been in this role since August of 2023, having previously been in congregational ministry for 14 years, first in Milton, Ontario, and then here in Regina. When I was first being asked about my interest in this role, I was asked about what caught my attention. And I replied that when I study my pension statement, I estimated that I have about 2.5 decades of ministry remaining within this United Church. And that I was determined to spend every single one of those years focused on what is possible, where we might be going next. One of the spaces where that conviction lies that God still calls the United Church is in our department's weekly prayer time. We gather with communities of faith to pray for and with their ministries. Thursdays at 11 Central Time. We would love to have you join us or to let us know how we can be holding you in our prayers. And we'd invite you as you pray for your ministry, for the ministry of the communities that you are connected with, and for your regional council to keep us in your prayers as well. When I was in university, I worked at a sports camp in the summer. And one of the things I taught there was mountain biking. When we taught mountain biking, we would teach a skill called tracking to the campers. We would pause along a trail ride and we'd all get off our bikes, and the campers would walk up and down the trail to come and we'd point out the obstacles that were there. You know, the rock on the left, the branch on the right, the spot where the trail twists and turns in the middle. But here's the thing with tracking. In tracking, you're not looking at the obstacles. You're looking for the path that you want to travel through the obstacles. Because here's the thing with mountain biking. Where we focus is where we go. And if you're biking along and you're thinking to yourself, don't hit the rock, don't hit the rock, don't hit the rock, don't hit the rock. My friends, you are going to do one thing and one thing only. You are going to hit the rock. But when we focus on where we want to go, when we focus on that path that we see, when we fix our eyes on that, sometimes we still hit the rock. But we pedal and we hold ourselves in such a way that we find the place that we're going to. And I wonder if we might be in a moment where many communities within the United Church of Canada and in many of our collective conversations, we're in a bit of a don't hit the rock moment, where we can see so clearly what we hope won't happen, but we're struggling to fix our eyes on that which we hope we can pursue. Former moderator Carmen Lansdowne would often say that we do our best work when we're trying to pursue goals, when we're trying to realize visions and dreams, not when we're trying to solve problems. And this is what Towards 2035 is all about. Together, as a whole church, naming where we want to go, where we believe God is calling us, and while fully acknowledging the challenge of our moment, fixing our eyes, following the signs, and nurturing the seeds, rooted in prayer and discerning what is the next right step for us. So whose work is Towards 2035? Well, to quote Disney's High School Musical, we're all in this together. Towards 2035 is a call to the church, to the whole church, to all of us, to communities of faith alone and in clusters, regional councils, the general council, the staff, committees, commissions, to join together with God as we proclaim in a new creed who has created and is creating to write the next chapter of the United Church of Canada. Towards 2035 is about envisioning the future presence of the church, not about bemoaning decline. We're going to be asked to name and to understand what decline is all about, because this is the context that we found ourselves, but it's not our story. At least we don't have to choose it to be our story. It might be the rock, but it doesn't have to be the path. We begin this conversation appropriately so in the centennial year, as we remember 1925 and the years that led up to it. Incidentally, those were years in which the prairies showed what was possible at the grassroots level. Just saying, y'all, we might want to think about whether the time is to do that again. Church union was a vision for a church for Canada that was still defining itself, a call to be present across an expanding landscape and a growing population. This is what it meant in the minds of our forebears to be the church that Canada needed, as best as they could name it. In the 1960s, to be the church that Canada needed meant that there needed to be a church with all the programs and all the structures, probably literally the bells and the whistles, in every high school catchment area and in every spot that the railway would stop. And then change happened, and more change inside the church and in society. And it leaves us the question, what is our vision now? What is the church that we understand Canada to need in 2035 and beyond? And how must we shape ourselves? And what does faithfulness look like now? Not for the survival of an institution, but for the sake of the good news that we are not alone, that we live in God's world. And this question of what comes next brought together national staff leaders and regional council executive ministers in the fall of 2024 to look honestly at where we find ourselves collectively and where we might be heading. That group brought together numbers and maps and lived experience and so many stories of ministry from across the church. They came together with love for the church and asked big, hard questions. Like, what is the likely future of the United Church of Canada if the current path continues? What might it take to shift this trajectory? And what does leadership look like when it comes from a place of faith and not a place of fear? It was becoming increasingly clear that a whole church response was necessary to begin a conversation towards a whole church strategy rooted in a sense of call, but informed by our reality and the realities in the church and beyond. And that was fueled by a vision of a resilient, inspired, diverse, and multi-generational church that is called in love to witness and to minister across a vast country and in rural and remote communities and in urban centers, in coast to coast to coast. Now, when we say whole church, a whole church strategy, I wonder if we sometimes hear in those words an idea that it's going to be something one size fits all, created somewhere and imposed on others. But to be whole church means that each part in its own context is asking the same question in harmony with each other. What is the church that is needed in this moment and in the years to come? And how can we best be what our neighbors and our neighborhoods need us to be, giving the realities we're experiencing? And whole church also means that we are called to weave our discerning together, to be connected, to be united, not uniform, to recognize that regions are asked to hold a picture geographically that is essential for discernment to happen locally, that the General Council holds a countrywide perspective that is out of touch, if not informed by local experience, and is also positioned to see patterns and trends emerging that an on-the-ground view can't discern. To be the whole church is to ask what is best done at what level and what questions can be asked at which level. This requires trust and a lot of listening. And it requires us to hold in tension patience and urgency and to have a lot of prayer and a lot of listening. In a song of faith, we proclaim that we sing of a church seeking to continue the story of Jesus by embodying Christ's presence in the world. We are called together by Christ. I want to invite us to pause for a moment and to think about these words, to think about Jesus, to think about what is it in the story of Jesus, what he loved, what he lived, how he taught, how he embodies a life of service to God. What is it about Jesus that captures our heart? I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking about stories of relationships being mended, that communities torn apart, brought back together and rebuilding in solidarity. I wonder what you would name for yourself. As you think about that, I want to draw our attention to the last line in this part of A Song of Faith, our time and place. When we think about the place that you call home, your town, your city, your postal code, your block, your neighborhood, your rural municipality. When you think about its distinctness and its uniqueness, but its increasing ties to a global community in a moment of great beauty and creativity, but such intersecting crises, ecological crisis, economic crisis, crisis of migrations, crisis of marginalization. What is it about the story of Jesus, about the presence of Christ in our world, do we long to see embodied where you live? Not just talked about for an hour on Sunday mornings, but in the neighborhood where you live, love, work, and play. And in the book of Isaiah, we hear the voice of God say, I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? A people who were living in an unimaginable moment were heard these words and were invited to pay attention and be on the lookout for signs of what might be possible, even if it seemed so unlikely to them. And so towards 2035 is rooted in a conviction that the story of Jesus matters to our time and to our places. And towards 2035 is rooted in a conviction that God is present and active in our time and in our places. And towards 2035 asks us to pay attention and to perceive what God is doing and to discern how we will respond. A resource to invite congregations to discuss towards 2035 together within congregations and beyond, with other congregations, with other communities of faith, with other ministries, is in the final stages of being edited and will be available within a few weeks. And that will be a tool that will allow conversations to happen wherever you find yourself. Now, towards 2035, as I said, isn't about focusing on decline, but part of this conversation does need to be understanding with realisticness an assessment of where we find ourselves. We know that there are fewer people worshiping in, volunteering in, giving to, and participating in United Church ministries. And at many board and council tables and in online meetings, there's feelings of exhaustion, of anxiety, and of fear. Now, the resource that's being created looks at all of this in detail, but we're going to look at a few things together this evening. If you're a person who loves charts, my friends, charts are coming. If you're a person who's like, life is way too complex to be captured in charts, I hear you. But charts can help us give something to look at and something to think about. Now, I wonder what you were doing in 1991. I was living in Milton, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. I loved basketball, and my favorite band was Crisscross. That was those teenage rappers who wore their clothes backwards. I am thankful that I grew up in an age of film cameras, which means my parents had to decide if what I was doing at any given moment was worth one of 25 frames in the drive to the mall to get those photos developed. So whether or not I indeed wore my jeans and my hoodie backwards when I went to see Crisscross at Canada's Wonderland when I was in grade 6, well, friends, there is no photographic evidence that can either confirm nor deny that. So it'll all just remain a mystery. Also in 1991, the Canadian census asked Canadians about their religious affiliation. The most common answer was Roman Catholic. 49% of Canadians said that. The United Church of Canada was second, 12%. Another 23% named another Christian association, and 4% replied with other faiths. And only 13% said no religion. When that same question was asked in 2021, there's a significant change. Roman Catholic had reduced from 39% to 49%, sorry, to 33%, United from 12 to 4. Other faiths had increased to 13%, but that red slice, and I'll toggle back so you can see it, that red slice goes from 13 to 39%. No religion had become the single most common response. And what can we say of United Church participation in that same time? And what does that tell us about how we might think about the future and what a future without intentional intervention might look like? Now, the resource that comes gives these for you, and you can look at them in a lot more detail. So we're just breezing through today to give a bit of an overall picture. And I'm going to invite us to look at the trajectory in the graphs, not the specifics themselves. This is what membership looks like in the United Church of Canada over those periods. In 1992, a bit more than 750,000 members. And in 2023, that's become about 320,000. These numbers come from the yearbook statistics that are submitted each year. But that red block comes from data folks who work for the General Counsel office using numbers from each year to establish a trend and to project it forward into 2035. It's not meant to be a prediction. It's not meant to be a prophecy. It's meant to be math, and math doesn't account for everything. But it can give us something to visualize. And when we can visualize it, we can name it and we can talk about it. And I want to invite you to think about your community of faith. And I wonder if this chart reflects your experience. I'm going to show some more slides, but we're just going to move through them quickly to look at the overall trajectory of what we see as gold turns to blue and looks forward into red. Average Sunday worship attendance, pretty similar curve. Identifiable givers as well. And total participants in Sunday school. Now, we know that none of these things tells the whole story of a life of community of faith. And we know this. And none of these on face value allows us to speak to what is faithful ministry. But they allow us to talk about something. And they allow us to take questions that perhaps go unspoken and give them something to wrestle with. Because we know that these changes have been borne out in the lives of real people, some on this call and some people that we love and care for in our communities. We know that these changes have felt like disappointment, like discouragement, that they look like burnt out volunteers, stressed and worried. It looks like communities no longer able to be the version of the church that they have always known. And for some, the only version of themselves they could imagine themselves being. I want us to think about these 4 charts with very similar trajectories because this final one looks different. This is what the number of pastoral charges looks like according to our yearbook statistic. About 2,400 in 1992 and 1976 and 2023. And when you project that trend, you have a very different looking curve. There's decline, but it's at a far different rate. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I was paying attention to those other charts, how on earth could such a large number of pastoral charges be sustained with such a small number of people participating in whichever metric we look at? If you're thinking that, and before tonight, you thought to yourself, I don't know how to analyze data. I wouldn't even know where to start making head or tails of it. If you thought that you're doing it, you're analyzing data. Because that's exactly what data analysts would ask in this question. What does all this cause us to pay attention to? You know, many of the conversations we have within ourselves that the United Church is closing congregations. We sometimes say at the rate of 1 per week. And there's no denying that, and nor is there downplaying the significance that that has on the people of those congregations or the communities in which they're located. And while that's true, there's perhaps another dynamic we want to think about. Because rather than some places remaining stable or holding steady over this 30-year period while others have shifted, that shift has been experienced throughout. There are exceptions, of course, but pretty much everywhere. We might call this a thinning out or a hollowing. And what this means is that the experience of having less or feeling like we're just holding on is starting to become normative. One of the things we hear again and again, wherever we are within the collective church, is something like, we're doing okay, as long as ... doesn't happen. And the ... doesn't usually refer to an unimaginable crisis like a once in a generation respiratory pandemic or the loss of an industry or a major population shift. What we're hearing is a sense of threat that one or two crises, like a building repair, the retirement of a minister, the death of a donor, or the moving away of a key leader or a key volunteer, that something like this could bring a community to a point of decision about whether they continue as a ministry, and that this thought is causing tremendous anxiety and concern. And another thing that we might perceive is that sometime in the coming 10 years, we could anticipate a bit of a pivot, that red column catching up to the other ones in the charts we saw before. And because of the thinning is pervasive, this could mean significant swaths of the country with no United Church presence. And perhaps you can already name within your own area where that has started to happen. This is deeply significant in rural and remote areas, but it's not limited there. Now, at issue is not that we once had more franchises than Tim Hortons, and that we really got a lot of our sense of self out of that fun factoid, and that we're worried that if this trajectory continues, that one day we'll only be able to say that we have more franchises than Robin's Donuts. But if we think back to these words, to what we have said moves us and is important about the story of Jesus, and if we believe that this story that we seek to continue in our presence matters to the place that we call home, that it matters to human lives, that we sense that we are called to witness to a living and loving God, then large swaths with no United Church presence is something much more different that we need to think about. And at the same time, it might require us to think about the ways we have understood United Church presence to be embodied and lived out, and perhaps become open to ways that might be necessary to live it in different ways. And what if this? What if these new ways are not settling for a second best future, one that we're going to put up with because the thing we really want we can't have anymore? But what if they challenge us to embrace ways of being that may indeed bring us to a truer expression of our call to be Jesus' beloved people, ways that we would have not imagined otherwise? Because towards 2035 is not about decline, nor is it about a dismal future. I mean, these charts are part of the story. They form the context and they call our attention. But what else is happening that offers signs that indeed there is a new thing emerging? And I'm just going to say a few things, and there's more that perhaps you have noticed in your area. Would it surprise you to hear that 2,000 people joined United Churches in 2024, either through a profession of faith or through adult baptism? Now, you might say, Cam, this is a drop in the bucket compared to the charts we looked at earlier. But this time, it's not about the math. It's about what happened in human lives. 2,000 people found something that resonated with their hearts and heard in there a call to respond. And there's many other ways that this look that don't show up in metrics we submit in yearbook statistics. In many conversations within United Churches, it's possible to perceive that there is a loss of confidence that the Christian faith that we share and that we proclaim could possibly matter in the lives of our neighbors. And I wonder if things like this help us to challenge that perception. In both 2022 and 2025, the United Church engaged with public researchers to seek to learn more about how non-churchgoers understand faith and think about their lives. And here's some of what we learned. 60% of Canadians express a felt sense or a concern about stress or their emotional and mental well-being, and are wondering about whether they're living their lives to their fullest potential, or feeling lonely, or that they lack meaningful relationships. And in a second study, 49% of those engaged express a thought or a conviction that there is a higher power or a God, and almost half engage in a practice of personal prayer. What do we perceive about the spiritual longings within our neighbors as we think about that? What areas of possible connection might this suggest to us? Not, goodness gracious, how can we capitalize on this to fill our empty pews, our vacant committee spots, and our dwindling budgets? But what do we hear God calling us to as we think about this? Perhaps you saw this spring this photo, a place at the table. And following up from this large national campaign, 115 communities of faith signed up to participate in the 100 tables process. Participants were given the means to get a table, to decorate that table, and to use it to share what they believed, the story that they carried about Jesus' invitation to an expansive table could mean for their neighbors. And there were lots of exciting different possibilities. But the one thing that we're noticing that's really neat to share here is how surprised and how joyfully surprised participants report being at how interested their neighbors were at making connections. And I wonder if one of the consequences of the decline that we have experienced shows up in a lack of confidence that we have a faith that is worth giving voice to at all. And I wonder if things like these, signs like these, offer us the possibility of imagining that God is doing a new thing. The realities of immigration and church participation is something we're working to better understand at its full scale, but it's already showing signs of something that we need to pay attention to. In addition to 11 new communities that have been birthed in the church planting program at Pacific Mountain Regional Council, there are 24 worshiping, discipling groups with migrant communities that are emerging through the General Council Growth Initiative. And many congregations, not just in urban centers, are seeing engagement with immigrant communities. Whole international denominations, many of Methodist origin, are in conversation about whether their members in Canada might find a safe landing space in the United Church. What do we perceive in this movement that we might pay attention to, that we might learn from, that we might seek to orient ourselves towards? Towards 2035 invites us to ponder what it could mean to think about the future of the United Church of Canada in words like these. In 2035, resilient, inspired, diverse, contextual, United Church communities of disciples, coast to coast to coast, rural and remote and urban, continue the story of Jesus by embodying Christ's presence in our time and place. In the broadest of terms and in diverse expressions across the country, inspired means to embody the aspects of the denominational call and vision, deep spirituality, bold discipleship, and daring justice. Resilient communities have sufficient stability and sustainability to prevent them from feeling like they are one or two crises away from closure. There is a sense of having enough and a sense of being enough. What would it mean to hold in our minds an idea that the United Church as a whole more closely reflects the racial and ethnic diversity of Canada with Indigenous and Francophone presence and includes the presence of all generations, notably children, youth, and young adults? Can we find in these words something to train our hearts and minds to look for? Like we taught campers at sports camp to look for the path that they wanted to bike along. Can we speak to one another, not just about what we hope we will avoid, but what we long to build? Can words like these give us something that can become the larger story we tell about ourselves and who we pray we are becoming? And can they also be spacious enough for the diverse ways the Spirit will call us to embody this in different spaces? If we are to begin our hope for the future of the United Church of Canada in terms like these, we see from data and our common experience challenges and the need to pay attention. Towards 2035 is for the whole church, but it's not a highly coordinated master plan. It's not about one size fits all, not at all, but it's offered to the whole church. For regional councils to look strategically with the mind of what things might be happening over the next 10 years in their area. It calls the regional councils and general council to align the work of the denomination to best support and accompany communities as they discern what is the call of their moment, the call of the Spirit in their context. What about communities of faith? Here are 5 threads that I think we can pick up on, and these are part of the congregational resource. And they'll form additional prayer and resources to come. Can we find what happens if we find a renewed trust that our stories matter? What if we relearn or learn for the first time to listen to the Spirit in our prayers? And what if we join in our individual communities and with other communities to pray and to listen? And we express in our profession of faith that we are not alone. So what if there are places in which we have been struggling in isolation, where we can learn to lay down some of the things that we have been holding too tightly and learn to live our faith and our life of faith in new expressions? What if we can learn to articulate to our neighbors not just an invitation to an hour on Sunday, but to a connection that has given us life and hope? What if we look to where in our area there are newcomer communities or young people, not looking to pad our numbers or solve our problems, but who might be looking for a place at the table that they can belong? For we carry a vision of creation healed and restored, and so we welcome all to a table where none shall go hungry, where we gather as Christ's guests and friends, and where we tell the story, and where we continue the story of Jesus in our time and in our places. So thank you for the space to present. I'm not sure if our chairs are going to, I think we now have some time for questions. I'm not sure if our chairs are going to facilitate that, or if I'll look to Doug and Dawn to lead us in that moment, or to tell us what's happening.
Yeah, no, please, Cam, if you and Jordan can just lead this question period. I mean, the questions are going to come to you anyways. I don't have the answers. So please do. And I know there has been a couple things popping up in the chat, just about availability of resources and what to expect.
Yeah, all of the material that's a part of what you've seen this evening is a part of that congregational conversation guide that is going to be available within the next few weeks.
So folks, we'd love it if you would put up your hands and ask some questions, and we'll call on you.
Or put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them that way.
Let's start with Karen Wall. Thanks, Karen. Please unmute and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. One of the things that I see happening in my own church that makes me agree with a lot of what I've heard is the more we participate or encourage things within our community that don't come with, if you need to come to our church for us to do this. We just make ourselves, make us people see that they are welcome to participate in whatever way they want without the underlying assumption that they have to physically join the church. And I really like some of the things that are happening this way, that people are getting active with the church community, but they aren't, they don't come to church every Sunday. They may not have even been raised in our faith, but they're very connected. And I think some of that was what you were talking about. I really see it as being a good thing. So.
Thanks for sharing, Karen. It's wonderful
Okay.
to hear.
And, oh, Elijah, you want to unmute, ask a question?
Okay, I want to say thank you so much for the presentation. It gives a background to me, who's just joined the United Church from Zambia. And it also highlights some of the ways we can interrupt this trajectory by seeing what is happening good within already and build on that. I just wanted to learn if there is any period in the history of the United Church where we experienced tremendous growth, and what could be the motivating factors for that period. And also, if you could, I also wanted to get the percentage anticipated decline, that is 2035. Apart from the numbers, yeah.
Jordan, did you want to talk to the historical period?
Sure. Not being a church historian, but certainly in the 50s and 60s, there was a surge in membership. It's interesting if we look at the numbers from 1925 when the United Church formed. They're closer to our current numbers than the church that many of us have in our mind, which is probably more like what we look like in the 1960s. So we're closer to where we started, which was a time of building and growing, and so the 60s were a particularly flush time, but they were also a turning point. They were sort of a peak time, but there's a lot of cultural reasons, a lot of things going on in the culture that were part of that, just as there are a lot of things going on in our current culture that are connected to our decline. It's not like we were doing the right things back then and we're doing the wrong things now. We're in a different cultural moment and a different cultural reality, and so we need to be different to meet this moment and not try to be what we were in the 60s when we were in a different context. Thank you for that question. It's a great question.
And Elijah, you had asked about percentage of anticipated decline. And if you're interested in diving more into any of the specific numbers, be happy to chat with you about that. But I want one thing I want to draw our attention back to is when we're talking these projections, we're avoiding calling them anticipation, because what we are inviting us into is a moment of deciding how we will move forward into that future. And so, I mean, even we are talking projections, not anticipations. The anticipation is that we are going to invite ourselves as the whole of a church to take the challenge of this moment, to take the call of this moment, to reimagine how we are to act with boldness and with hope, to seek to share our faith in different ways and begin to reimagine ourselves. And we may find that because of that and the new forms that we begin to inhabit, that the numbers that we are tracking, that we are using to imagine how we think about the future in the light of today will become different things that we start to think about. But happy to talk math and stats with you, Elijah.
Thank you so much, Jordan and Cam, for the response. I'll be able to chat with you, Cam.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Cam, for the presentation. And I felt like um, you have given your heart and soul to it, and we can really feel that. My question could be similar to what Elijah had just asked, and that bothers me because back in India, something like which I have not seen or not was familiar with about the decline, about the numbers and numbers in churches or members. Do you see any? You must have ideas and planning, but I would love learn from you. Do you see any platform or any ways through which we can talk about, like, to rejuvenate the strength of the church and to come up again with full spirit and work in such a way that um, that will help us grow more and more, be the light, continue to be the light, and shine for God. Yeah, so that is what I would. Do you have some strategy or plan? Or I'm sorry, I think these are all these words are not accurate, maybe, but you understand what I'm feeling. I
Yeah,
believe.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, and I think I think that part of the goal of Towards 2035, and we've got wonderful regional colleagues here, Judy and Shannon, and the regional council executive who are here, and the intent is that at those levels, strategic thinking about where are places to support and desire to increase the resourcing that is available for accompaniment at community of faith level. So one wonderful example is Jordan and Jordan's role as growth animator to come up with communities who wish to kindle within themselves that invitational instinct to imagine how to connect with neighbors and how to share their faith. And Jordan, happy to hand things off to you if you want to say a bit about what that looks like.
Well, that would take the rest of the evening and half of tomorrow. But I will say, I hope that you read your regional newsletters, because I do put things in there, and something just came out. Actually, it got sent out separate from the newsletter because it was a little it got missed, but that's fine. It came out, so you got a separate email that is some resources for Advent. To help strengthen the invitational culture of your church. And then there's some additional resources in there that can be used at any time of the year. And so that's just a tiny, tiny sampling of some of the kinds of resources that growth animators, myself included, have, that we can, work with your community of faith to help you shift the culture in your church from one of, focus on decline to one of thinking about, what's the Spirit up to in our communities, and how can we come alongside it, and how can we engage with our neighbors and invite them to join us in what we're doing as we join them in what the Spirit is doing amongst them. So yeah, there's workshops, there's resources, and there's ample space for conversation to just help folks to think differently about what God might be calling us to do and to be that meets the needs and the challenges of this moment. So, and I know that in all of the regions in that I serve, Northern Spirit, Living Skies, Prairie to Pine, there are stellar staff who are also deeply committed to this, who are also, and lots of volunteers. Committee of for community of faith support in Prairie to Pine is fantastic, to help come alongside communities of faith as you think about how, if we can't do things the way we have been doing them, we can do that, but then we're going to get where we're going. But then we end up where those red lines are. But if we want to do something different, what can that look like? And we have to imagine that together, dream that together, and there's good support for us as we do that.
And as we become comfortable within ourselves as to naming again what it is that the faith that we have inherited, the stories that we treasure, these practices that we engage in, what they have birthed in our own lives, and we begin to think about the needs of our neighbors. And then we can think about how do we develop that courage and that capacity, not to try to bolster our attendance, but to be able to say to the people that we know and that we love and that we care about, hey, I know that you're going through this thing. This Sunday, at the church I go to, we're talking about this particular thing. Maybe that might be of benefit to you. Come with me. Let's go. They say that the most effective Facebook ad you could ever buy is not a Facebook ad at all. It's one person saying to another person, I'll pick you up at 7:15. We'll grab a coffee and we'll sit together.
Yeah. Thanks. Linda.
Okay, good evening. I heard you guys yesterday, and it was really great again because because it's so much to be able to hear it over and over again. It kind of gets it. And I guess my concern or my question is that working in the congregations that we do right now, we're working with the people who were sitting in the pews listening to the minister. And and the minister was the one who made the decisions and, the direction of the church and everything like that. There were some minor places where the congregation would participate if it was with a tea or something, or the property. I'm not trying to minimalize that. I'm just saying that they're used to hearing what the answer is going to be. And how are we going to do this? That's the purpose of going to church. Like a lot of times when I've been, because I've tried to have this conversation about in 10 years' time. Well, other than the fact that a lot of them are thinking we're not even going to be here in 10 years' time, so it's not going to be our problem. Like, how can we ask questions so that, the decline, everybody knows that that's what it is. But how can we ask the questions that give the confidence that your particular answer just might be something that would light a spark in somebody else? Like, as I say, I've tried to ask questions and everything like this, or I'll ask somebody about a question that, good grief, they've been in Sunday school for the past 80 years ago. They should know the answers by now, but nobody gives the answer. What if I'm wrong? So that confidence to be able to say that the Spirit of God has moved inside you for a lot of years. You've got some answers. You've opened the question to all these people here, and we're even involved heavily in the church, and nobody answers, or one or two, because it's hard. It's scary. So I was just wondering, in the resources and everything like this, how do we start to ask the icky, deep kind of questions that mean that you have to talk from your gut? Because your guts has got you a lot of places, a lot of times, and there might just be something that's totally needed in this particular moment. Yeah.
Can I answer that, Cam? Thank you, Linda, for that. And that you've pointed out something that's really critical, is that many, not all, but many people in the United Church don't feel equipped to be able to speak faith language. You named something. We listen to it. Many of us sitting in the pews our faith practice is more about listening to somebody with some kind of theological training talk faith language to us. And so that is part of the work I believe that we need to be doing, is helping to equip ourselves and one another to be able to speak about our faith and to speak faith language, and that'll be uncomfortable and difficult at first, and then it will begin to feel natural. And there are people among us who are very good at it, who will be important models, role models, and teachers as we do that. But that is, I think, a really key piece of what we need to do to revitalize our own faith and our own discipleship, and to be able to share that with others, so that we don't just have the good news, but we're sharing the good news. We need to find the language for that. We need to practice it. And we will. And we do have resources for doing that. And that's what we're, as growth animators, we're working on. How do we get these resources into communities of faith's hands so that we can begin to equip ourselves to be able to talk about faith, speak faith language. Not in, I'm not saying now I know how to use eschatology correctly, not that kind of faith language, but to be able to say, this is the impact that my relationship with Christ is having in my life. This is the transformation I've experienced because of my connection with the United Church. This is how my life is better. I wonder if that resonates for you. I wonder if you hear anything in that might speak to your life. So
Thank
thank
you,
you for that
folks.
question.
Just to note that we have just a few more minutes of this part of the meeting, and we're going to ask people to ask their questions in a really succinct way, and we're going to really try to get through them. On to Irene. Cam, did you have something?
Well, I was going to say, why don't we do all 3 questions, and then there might be some. Then we can either answer some things in the chat. So we'll have each question, as Don mentioned, succinctly put. And this is not your region's only time to engage this topic.
Camera on too.
Yeah, Cheryl, what's your question?
Okay. Well, I know several people. I can't see their faces, but I know several people on this Zoom tonight. Anyway, I'll try to be brief. I've been very involved with Rock Lake Pastoral Charge, and now I'm chair of the trustees. I searched out Reverend Shaway. I was also chair of the amalgamation that we did back in 2016. The sad part about it is we have no finances left in our church. We have 200 on our list. I don't think we're any different than lots of other places. And we see about an average of 25. And when you look out from the choir, they're mostly all gray-haired folks. So we don't have the young people. We don't have the people. Out of that 200 people, I asked the treasurer, what would we bring in on our fall appeal last year? And she said about 11,000. Well, that isn't going to pay our 43,000 that we need for 3 months. So we've had to give Reverend Shaway his 90-day notice. It's very sad for me this week because he's part of my family. But what is our future going forward? We're probably going to have to sell our church, but I listened to what you said, Cam, and it was awesome. Thank you very much. So, you know, do we look at doing something in a different way? And you did say there's supports to do that. I guess I'm just kind of reaching out if there's anything that you can, any guidance you can give me, that would be awesome.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. And Irene and Joan?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my question is, I speak from the context of an urban congregation in Winnipeg, and we have recently sold our building and moved and chosen to move in with a Lutheran church that is affirming, that supports a lot of the things that we are a part of as a congregation. So that's some of the background. My question, I think, is more structural to the United Church of Canada is, where do ecumenical partnerships and connections fit in the midst of policies and procedures as we move forward? Are there blockages? Is there an openness? We talk about newness. What does that look like? I have no idea where we're headed, but I just would like to know where the United Church of Canada stands on the structural issues as we move forward.
Okay, great, thanks. And Scott, your question?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this property slide that you had, or the pastoral charges, and how it correlated differently than the decline we saw in participants. And I'm sure there must be a connection to some of the creative and even entrepreneurial thinking that we've had with our properties. And so that even though our numbers may be down, we're leveraging our properties differently within the community, finding revenue generating streams. And I think that also some of our exhaustion is around the upkeep and maintenance of the buildings, which we do need to do ministry. I mean, I think of our congregation, and if we were to close our doors, I mean, there are 30 plus groups, community groups that have life and sustenance through our building. And so does the resource, or will the resource, speak to better ways to leverage our property, our assets, better ways to alleviate how we manage those properties, like say through property management companies, etc. Does the resource speak to that aspect of our ministries?
So Don, let me try to wrap these questions up in about 25 seconds, with largely stay tuned for more. Scott, the initial resource is an introductory one, but with more things to come. And to answer all three separately, issues of helping communities discern what is the next right step for them in challenging situations and exciting situations is something that regional councils with accompanying staff like growth animators are working on together, and how our properties can be leveraged for the good in the world that they are called to do is absolutely key to that. And as Shannon has put into the chat, very little polity barriers that prevent us from working with ecumenical partners, but a lot of intentionality and a lot of time and trust building is required. These are just some things, and we're thrilled to hear and to pick up many more threads. And we know you as region have some exciting conversations to come about that. Thanks for having us tonight.
Thank you so much, Cam and Jordan. Fantastic, fantastic session. And yeah, we were 10 minutes ahead before and 2 minutes behind now after, which is fine. But it speaks to the passion, and it speaks, and passion means that we care. And so many great questions. And this is, again, this is not a one-time thing. This is an ongoing. I know even the wrong word is project. But like I say, stay tuned. More resources to come. This is going to evolve. We're going to have more chances to speak in this. You can count on it happening in our gathered meeting in May as well. So, anyways, we need to move along. Again, want to thank our presenters, Cam and Jordan. And so now we want to invite Vicky and Sarah for our Stewardship Foundation session. Hi, Vicky. Good to see you.
Hi, Doug. Thanks. Yeah, it's just me tonight. Sarah is not here. She is busy off doing other things, but I'm here to talk about stewardship and the foundation and mission and service and a few other things. So thanks so much for having me. And I'll answer questions at the end if people have questions, but really my time with you is more of a pitch deck to get involved. And so I work a lot with Jordan actually as a growth animator, and I don't have animator in my title. I'm stewardship support, but we similarly have a lot we share a role in supporting communities of faith in their work. And so listening, I'm trying to read the chat, but I'm not good at reading and talking at the same time. So I'm going to leave that and listening to the stories, Cheryl's story about the financial challenges in her congregation, and somebody posted about testimonies and in their congregation through their stewardship campaign. I think sometimes that we do need to talk about money and volunteerism, and especially money because it's the hardest part, to see some of this growth stuff happen. It's part of the picture. So even though I was listening to Cam and Jordan just as eagerly as you folks, I'm not connected to that presentation. I do hope you will end up working with me because there are some threads that tie us together. So can you folks see a screen that is just another picture of me, hopefully? Okay, great, because I can't see anything. Hold on, let me see if I can find a note slide. All right, great. So yeah, this is me, this is a picture of me, and stewardship support is what I do. And so I get the privilege of working with communities of faith to talk about generosity, to help build those cultures of gratitude that can kind of help ease us away from those red lines and those slides, and also just transform your community of faith. Because I can't remember who said it in the chat, the name now, but talking about our generosity, talking about why we love our churches actually can really impact the morale, the sort of the spirit of a church. So I'm going to talk about a bunch of things. I'm going to talk about the foundation. I'm going to talk about mission and service. I'm going to talk about a few other things, but I want to say the core of my work is to support communities of faith. And a big way that I do that, and that my team, there's 4 of us that serve all across Canada, is called to be the church, the journey. And so these are workshops. And I know I see familiar faces. Many of you have done these workshops before, but they're a great way to begin a relationship with myself or just in stewardship. And they're all online and they're actually great. So if you're interested, I want you to get in contact with me. And my email's at the bottom of the slide, and I'm going to put it up at the end too. So whether you like to you just need some stewardship basics, or maybe you're like, that's not me, I'm not the stewardship person, please just like write down my email address and offer it to someone in your community of faith and say, hey, maybe you'd be interested in reaching out to Vicky. Maybe you need to run a stewardship campaign. Maybe it's a year-end thing, or maybe it's just, it's fall. It's time to start talking about it. Maybe you're looking ahead to 2026 and wanting to do legacy giving, or encourage that kind of generosity. I am your person to help get those things started. And I want to hear from you so bad that I have a carrot that I'm going to dangle. So I have an offer. So I want you to email me your name, your community of faith, and one thing you love about your church. And when you do that, if you're interested, I mean, I have lots of things I could share, but because of the time of year it is, I will send you a sample sort of year-end appeal that you could send to your membership that talks about, it helps you write an inspiring message about the ministry your church is doing and invites people to generously respond. And I'll send you a template, and then you can put all your own information in, and then you can send it back to me and I'll help you edit it and make it sound perfect. You can put it on letterhead and you can pop those babies in the mail and see what happens between now and January. So that's my carrot I'm dangling. If you want a resource, please get in contact with me. It can be that simple. The next thing I just wanted to talk about, because I'm just going to fly through a few offers, is that there is right now, we are in the midst of the Centennial Legacy campaign. And this is a multi-year campaign that's seeking to help congregations get sort of the skills and the tools to invite legacy giving to support their ministry into the future. So this is a denomination-wide campaign. And there was some confusion, like, absolutely, gifts can be made to mission and service or to the United Church Foundation, one of the funds that are supported through the foundation. But really, the bulk of the campaign is set up to support volunteers, ministry personnel, like local people in churches to do legacy work. There's all sorts of resources online on how to create policies so you can accept gifts well, how to ask people and invite people for generosity, that kind of thing. So I can help connect you to those resources. I can help, get you involved in the campaign. There's monthly meetups where churches just meet on Zoom to share kind of what they're doing with the campaign and to get ideas. It's actually really awesome. And so again, email me and I can connect you with that. I'm also your friendly local mission and service booster. I know actually in Prairie du Pine, many of you are mission and service boosters. This is always my favorite annual meeting because, well, I don't know. I don't think Leslie has anything zany planned this year, but there is always excitement around what we do together with our shared generosity and mission and service. So if you need help, if your congregation hasn't really talked about mission and service, hasn't set goals or thought about that kind of giving in a number of years, reach out to me. Let's like chat about kind of what's going on in your context and how I can support that. We have seen, like, I guess I just want to share that there was a study done. It's a little old now, but I think it probably rings true still, is that churches who talk about mission and service, who are explicit, telling stories about the shared work of our denomination around the world, in your own region, across the country, those who celebrate its role in the church often experience greater giving to their own congregation, to their local giving as well. And I think that sometimes churches, when times get tight financially, they stop talking about mission and service because they feel like they're competing with mission and service. But actually, the research bears that generosity breeds generosity, and inspiring stories of things that being a part of the United Church does and supporting these things actually breeds deeper generosity to your local congregation as well. So if you haven't talked about mission and service, if you haven't used the mission and service stories, consider it. And if you're like, they still make those, email me and I'll send you the link. They're not mailed out anymore, but they are very much written every week. They are available, plus many worship services and all sorts. Plus, I just also wanted to name that Mission and Service is supporting some really great stuff in Prairie to Pine. And last year, I can't believe it was a year ago, it doesn't feel like it, but I was here on Zoom talking about some of those things. So I'm not going to go into all the sort of supported ministries, but I just wanted to name a couple things. Like in Prairie to Pine, in the region, there's an Equity and Diversity Committee, and Mission and Service supports the work of that committee and their event on bias. In Manitoba, there was the Northern Ministers Retreat, which was really well supported from people all across the country. Many people outside of the prairies supporting that retreat. Mission and Service as well. There's events for licensed lay worship leaders, for active ministers, for pastoral care visitors. All the support, that all comes from Mission and Service dollars. All your youth and young adult ministry, which Prairie to Pine has such a fabulous youth and young adults I'm trying to think of how it goes. Youth or young adult and youth. So how it's said here, committee and the work that they do. That's all Mission and Service funded. Growth and stewardship work. Parts of my job, Jordan's job, is supported through Mission and Service generosity and more. So Mission and Service funds a ton, and you, as donors to Mission and Service, are responsible for all of that. So thank you, because your gifts actually make a huge difference within our local churches, within our region, and across the country and around the world. So thank you very much. And in lieu of something silly happening, I'll just put this slide up. If you'd like to make a gift to Mission and Service, when I'm done talking, I'll put the link right into the chat so you can click it and make a gift that way. But you can also send an e-transfer to Prairie to Pine, and just note that it's for Mission and Service so that Sherry can get it to the right place. All right. So also within my realm of support is to help your community of faith or, another beloved United Church ministry or camp access grant funding, especially with the United Church Foundation. And so in the last few years in Prairie to Pine, there's been a number of congregations and ministries funded, like One Just City, the Sandy Soto Spiritual Center. They've received grants. Stonewall United Church received a grant for a senior summer camp, and Gordon King Memorial United Church for their exploration of art as a spiritual practice and art therapy work, which is very cool. So maybe you have a project that you're like, oh man, that would be really cool to try in my community of faith context. I just need some money. Talk to me and let's talk about how we can maybe access grants. And the foundation is one place, but there are other places to look at as well. Or if you're on the other end and your congregation has maybe some extra cash and would like to talk about investments or would like to talk about starting an endowment or a long-term trust fund with the foundation, this is a really great way to ethically invest and see good returns into the future. We can also talk about that. So I'm your link to the foundation. So just to sum up, things we could talk about. The Centennial Legacy Campaign, increasing generosity within your community of faith, running a stewardship campaign, Mission Service, how to support it, what it does. If you have any questions about getting Mission Service brochures or supplies into your congregation, I can help you do that. Accessing grants, investing with the United Church Foundation, and you can get a year-end appeal letter or other resources. I received an email today from a rural congregation in Alberta that's like, our minister's going to be away on November 23rd. Help. And I was able to find a really amazing Reign of Christ Sunday worship service for them, all on Mission and Service. So things like that, you might not think to talk to your stewardship person, but you can reach out to me and I can help. I'm pretty good at I think of it as like a sort of customer service. I'll find you the right person. So again, this is my email address. I would really love to hear more about your context. If you're having financial struggles or struggles with volunteers, I really love to hear about why you love your church, why you're spending a whole Thursday night in the church doing this work, and what you dream about, what your dreams for your church are, what's your vision for the future, and how maybe thinking about generosity or investments or grants or whatever might make that vision a possibility, a future. So thanks so much for your time. And I was like, I think a little under time, Doug. So we're making things up, I think. And I don't know how to stop sharing. Sorry. The thing keeps moving. There we go.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Vicky. That was awesome, inspiring. And everybody, yeah, anyone who's looking for stewardship ideas, there's a gift. Vicky's willing to help you handcraft that stewardship level letter. Just email her. So there's no like money isn't everything, but it is the currency of mission. And we needed to do what we need to do. All right. Yeah, so we're a little ahead of schedule again. Fabulous. And so now we're getting into our General Council 45, GC 45 overview. And I believe Emma Simone is my first presenter. Right?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. So I guess, sorry. And is Marissa sharing my slides? Is that okay? Marissa's sharing my slides. I was like, what's going on? So hi, I'm Emma Simone. I'm the minister at Carberry United Church, and it was my honor to be one of your general council reps in Prairie to Pine this past August. And I was asked just to give you a bit of a overview of what the general council is, because we know there's such a diversity of people here. We've already talked. Some of you are new to the United Church, and you might not know as much. So I wanted to just give you this kind of one-on-one lesson. So I took this screenshot from the organizational chart for the United Church. So in 2019, we had the restructuring, and that created the 16 regional councils, and you were at a regional council meeting. The general council is made up of 260 commissioners that are appointed by the general council and by the regional councils, are elected in order to meet, and the general council meets every 3 years, and this past August was one of those opportunities. And then they can also meet online annually if that's required. The general council executive is elected through the nominations committee of the general council, and it includes 15 members, and they meet on a more regular basis. So the purpose of the general council, the larger group, is to sort of set the priorities and listen to the proposals for the next 3 years. The general council has so many standing committees, which you'll see kind of over the side: the nominations committee, the audit committee, the judicial committee, the manual committee, and theology, interchurch, interfaith. And then the general council executive can kind of create committees or task groups at the discretion of based on what the general council has asked them to do as work for the next triennium. So that's sort of that. So then, Marissa, if you want to change slides. And then just a little bit about how we make decisions at the general council level. This has changed a lot over the years, but based on a lot of feedback, the current way that the general council makes decisions is that when somebody submits a proposal, then there are listening sessions where people learn more about the proposal from the people who wrote it. Then the general council goes into discussion groups where every general council commissioner is able to sort of talk about the proposal and what changes they would want to see to it or how they're feeling about it. All of the feedback from each of those discussion groups then goes to a facilitation group, which we often call the Way Forward Committee. And they look at all the feedback from all the discussion groups, and then they come up with a revised proposal based on what was talked about in all the various smaller discussion groups. So they come up with revised proposals, and those revised proposals then go back to the whole body of over 200 commissioners to vote on. Some notes about this most recent general council. Regional councils were encouraged to try to make sure that at least half of their delegates were from equity seeking groups. And so that meant that this was probably the most diverse general council that we've ever had. There was lots and lots of diversity in ages, in ethnic makeup, in first language, in abilities. And so it was a really, really diverse group. One thing to kind of think about in the way that the United Church works in a whole and kind of our theology behind the General Council and even the Regional Council here is that we believe that while your church chose you to be their lay delegate on Prairie to Pine, and why Prairie to Pine chose me to be a delegate at the General Council, that doesn't mean that I represent you in the way that an MP or an MLA would. What it means is I have been chosen based on your discernment to be in the room, to be one of those 260 people. And then I have to be open to the movement of the Spirit, what I hear from other people, and then I make the decision that I discern is where I'm at. And so we really believe that the Spirit moves people in the room. So it's not so much that you're representing someone, it's that you're open to the Spirit's movement, but you have been chosen to be the person in the room based on the discernment of the body that has chosen to appoint you. And one thing to note, because when we get to the decision sessions, we don't always get to get through all the proposals. So it's important to remember that even the proposals that haven't been decided on, the General Council executive, when something is forwarded to them because it was undecided on by the full body, they have access to all the discussion notes that come from the discussion groups. And so even if a decision wasn't made by the whole 260 people, that doesn't mean that the General Council executive won't have the feedback from those people when they go forward and discern what's best with the proposals. So hopefully that gives people a bit of background. And I think that's what I was asked to present on.
Great. Thanks so much, Emma. Great job. Trisha Garrard, I think, has a little bit to tell us about the apology.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Dawn. I was one of the folks who was on a General Council task group working on the apology to Two-Spirit LGBTQIA community within the United Church. And I'm going to give you a very brief summary of the process and the outcomes that happened, and then what's happening as we go forward. At the 42nd General Council way back when, the church that gathered had voted to have a national project of story sharing and dialogue with people affected by the church's 1988 decision. That is the decision to ordain gay and lesbian folks into ministry in the United Church of Canada. These stories would then help the church discern if and how it might live into an apology to the church's LGBTQ and Two-Spirit peoples. This was the birth of Irides, the living apology project that gathered the stories, perspectives, and experiences of being Two-Spirit or LGBTQIA in the church, of being folks who were allies to folks within that community, and the impact that the 1988 decision had on the community, including the 10 years that followed, which is called the issue years. They have these funny little, it's the decade, the issue decade. So this project was launched in 2017, and the work of the project culminated in the offering of the apology during the worship service in Calgary for GC 45. Right, that's where I was. It's late on a Thursday. It's done. I'm done. So how we ended up with that apology that was given during that worship service is that the General Council executive mandated a task group to be created to work on drafting and fine-tuning the apology that was ultimately given by the now past moderator, the very Reverend Carmen Lansdowne, and the executive secretary, Michael Blair. The initial task group was comprised of 4 members plus a general council staff person. And over several years, we met, our team changed, and membership changed with the loss of one person and then the addition of a couple of more people to offer a diversity of voices. This task group spent some time researching apologies that have been given by other denominations around the world, and also what governments have done in terms of apologizing to the queer community for past wrongs that have happened. Our task was to create an apology that was broad enough to include a multitude of those affected by the decision and the issue years, those who were the direct targets of trans and homophobia, intolerance, and misinformation. But it was also to be succinct and on the short side with accessible language and structure. An initial draft was sent to the General Council for feedback, and then the task group decided that the best course of action was to seek feedback from the wider church, and so we initiated some town halls and some individual contact for feedback directly to the team so that we could do some more work on the apology itself. Once that work was done, the draft was then submitted to the General Council Executive for approval and for the planning of the presentation of the apology at GC 45. As many of you know, the apology was given during the special worship. Myself and Erin Machioka were part of that worship service, which was lovely. It was written by Miriam Spies and other folk. And as you may or may not know from your own personal experience with receiving the apology and from other folks who have heard the apology, the reception has been mixed and has offered a jumping off point for conversation in congregations and with other folk as well. So the task group, while we were doing the work, was very aware that the apology is not nearly as broad as it needs to be to truly reach all those who've been affected by the church, both inside and outside of it. It was a humbling experience working on the apology, especially after it was given, and hearing the impact that the apology had, for better or for worse, on folk who heard the apology and were deeply affected by the apology itself. One of the pieces that the task group highlighted during our meeting time was that we really needed the General Council to move towards next steps of action, which is also part of the Irides project, to have tangible, meaningful action happen from the apology. So as I heard from many folk, words are not enough. Actions need to follow the apology to give it life. And so I know that there has been some animation conversation happening, including the task group, representatives from Affirm United, the regional councils, GCO staff, and some other invited guests to have conversation about what the General Council can be doing next in order to give life to the apology. I think we're one step on a long journey to making sure that we live into the words that we have said, and to make sure that we live into what we are professing in our apology. So that's my report to you on that.
Thanks so much, Tricia. Very, very well stated. Appreciate that, and the work that you've all done with that. Shannon is now going to present us a piece on the Indigenous Church.
Yes, before I do that, just an update in the chat. I've posted the General Council website where this General Council, the last General Council, and all future General Councils will be, information is there about what's happening, the updates, when the General Council Executive meets, all those kinds of things. So it's not on the regular United Church of Canada website. It's its own website because it's pretty specific to church nerds, I guess you could call us. And that's there, including a tracking document for all the proposals that were passed or not passed and where they're going, what's happening with them. So if you if you don't have anything exciting to do on Sunday. I know I have something I'm excited about on Sunday, but I know some of you are not as excited as I am. So you might want to read that website then. One of the pieces that came up at the General Council was how we live in relation to the remit that we passed around having an autonomous Indigenous organization within the United Church of Canada. And that is still something that we are living into and learning how to be in relationship in a new way with the members of the United Church who are part of our Indigenous communities of faith. And what has happened is that the National Indigenous Council is currently, the functions of that council being served right now by the National Elders Council. And they have set a national spiritual gathering, and it's for this summer, I believe. I don't know the exact dates, but it is happening. And at that gathering, hopefully a new National Indigenous Council will be put in place, and some of the way forward around what pieces of work need to be done, who needs to talk to who, how will consultation happen within the Indigenous communities of faith, to ensure that there is a decolonized process for that group to discern how they will move forward within the autonomous Indigenous organization. And so what that means is things are still, there aren't a lot of decisions yet. We are still in relationship. That will happen regardless of whether what the structure looks like. We as congregations can be in relationship with our Indigenous congregations within Prairie to Pine. We as a regional council can have relationship with the Indigenous church within our regional council. That the Kuwaitan Circle continues to meet and gather and make decisions as to how they will function. But it also means that sometimes we make decisions and they actually aren't ours to make. So that happened at General Council, in that we made some decisions as a General Council, and the National Indigenous Council can now say, yeah, no. Just like we made some decisions, there were some proposals trying to tell all the regional councils how to deal with their property. And the General Council has no authority whatsoever over property within the structures of the United Church of Canada. So they can ask us all they want, but we have the ultimate authority around how we want to do things. And that's the same with the National Indigenous Church, is that they have the authority to discern for themselves and make decisions, and we can't tell them what to do. We can't put limits on that. That is not ours to do. And so as we move forward, we'll figure out this relationship and what that looks like. And there's going to be some growing pains. We're going to make mistakes as we move forward and figure it out. But we're doing it together and in consultation and walking alongside the Indigenous church as they make these decisions. And always, I know that we like to be in dialogue with one another, to hear from one another, and to recognize the value that the Indigenous congregations within Prairie to Pine bring to our regional council. And so I was glad to see some of our friends from Norway House here tonight. And so that, I think, unless people have questions, is where I'll leave that, because I know it's 8:45 and we're all ready for bed.
Great. Thanks a lot, Shannon, for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think, I mean, I didn't see anyone immediately respond to Shannon's invitation to questions. So just a little bit of housekeeping before I pass the closing prayer to Noel. I just want to thank all the presenters who did just an outstanding job tonight. Such great information through really a broad scope. And again, the purpose of this meeting tonight was really to be forward thinking about not what we've done in the past, but what's before us, and what resources we have, and what we can look to, and what we should look to be moving forward as a church. And so I just want to thank all those presenters. You did a fantastic job. I want to give thanks to our staff that works tirelessly and energetically in supporting us and everything that they do for our region. Feel free to put up little golf claps for our staff who's doing such great work for us. Want to thank all our volunteers, which probably speaks to each and every one of you. Want to thank you for your great work as whether you're serving on one of the regional committees, or you're a rep, part of the regional council. If you're a guest tonight and you're taking in information to pass on to your own congregation, thank you for your volunteering and all that you're doing. A quick congratulations to all the people celebrating anniversaries for their years as Christian in their Christian service. There's a list of names in the docket. There's a report on that, and so all those that are celebrating milestones, we give thanks for your service and congratulations on your anniversary. And
Doug.
Yes. Does Dawn have anything to say?
I'd like to hear from Lynn and then Kristen.
I want to apologize. I was remiss in my report that we do have another change, and that Doug, who has been our co-chair, is going to be leaving us. So this is his first official chairing and his last official chairing as Prairie to Pine. And so we all want to thank you too, Doug, for saying yes and being part of this leadership. And I know I'm not alone in saying we're going to miss you, but we know that where you're going, they are going to be blessed to have you. So thank you, Doug.
Thank you so much for that.
You're muted, Kristen. I thought I unmuted myself. Did we try to unmute me at the same time, maybe? Anyway, now I'm unmuted. You can hear me. Yes, it was mentioned in the stewardship part that about one of the things that comes out of some of the mission and service givings is that some of the work that we do, and some of you would have seen in newsletters and emails going out about the Equity and Diversity Committee is hosting a workshop this coming up Monday, which is November 21st. It's at 7:30 p.m. We didn't have 2 regional evenings. We only had 1 this week. So now you can count this as your second regional thing, because it would really be good to have a good portion of people from at least somebody from every church there. Unconscious bias sounds like such a strange thing, but it really is unconscious, and that's why it's important for us to understand it a little bit better. This is about becoming inclusive and being conscious about the things that we don't know, and finding a way that we can connect better. And I mean, we're talking about that a lot at this meeting. So if you want to learn about how to become more welcoming and inclusive and do those kinds of things and to reach out, this is a really, really good step. So please, please, please put it on your calendars. Please ask people from your congregations to come. It would be great if there was somebody from each board, somebody from each MMP committee. If you're in a search time or transition time, tell people from your search committees or something like that to come. It's at 7:30 p.m. And it's at this coming up Monday. So in like 4 days. I'm going to put the registration link in the chat right now. So if you have not had a chance to do that, click on that link. It'll send you to a thing to get registered on Zoom, and then that'll send you the Zoom link through there. So Please come. We'll see you then. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. Dawn, are you next or?
I am next.
Okay.
I wanted to remind folks who were behind the scenes today, Doug, Shannon, Marissa, Twyla, mainly you folks, to just stay behind for a couple of minutes after the meeting. Thank you.
Right. And I think the last thing that I have is just to and to welcome you all or invite you all to the gathered meeting. We only gather every 3 years. The gathered meeting in May. We're looking at this as sort of like a precursor to that, and really excited about what's going to happen there. And the planning's underway. They're going to have an amazing meeting. Make sure you go. Looking, and of course I won't be there. I'll be with another region at that time, but I know you'll have a blast. My hearts and thoughts and prayers will be with you. Noel, can you pray us out?
Let us pray. And so we come before you and depart with gratitude and praise, offering you the worship of our hearts and lives. Open our eyes to see and know that you are here among us. Open our ears to recognize your voice. And then send us out from here to live and work in the world as your faithful disciples. Guide us by day and teach us by night. Be near us so nothing can shake us. Make us aware of your presence. Show us the path that leads to life, and let your Spirit fill us with joy, and let your service be our delight forever. And so as we go forth from this place with renewed inspiration to do the work of God, we seek the good, not the evil, love goodness, establish justice, for this is the greatest offering we can ever make, letting justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. We go in peace, with love for our neighbors and for your whole creation, in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Noel. And so with that, I declare that the 7th annual meeting of the Prairie du Pine Regional Council is now closed. I bid you good night and wish you all safe travel if that's applicable, and sweet dreams. Good night, all.